Hey, welcome to the first edition of Cooking with Christian. So what we're going to do here is cover some kitchen basics. We're going to talk a little bit about knives, how to use them, how to sharpen them. We're going to talk about some organizational things within the kitchen just to make their life easier, because a lot of people don't cook because pretty much it's a hassle. So in order to make it less of a hassle, we're going to try to organize things around the kitchen so that it's a little easier to get around, find stuff, and be able to get the job done. All right. So a couple things we're going to do. We're going to talk about knives. All right. This is what they call a chef's knife. Okay. This knife is useful for chopping vegetables. Good for rocking motions. Okay. Cuts straight through. You don't usually use this for sawing. Right. You just use it basically for chopping. The important part with these knives is that they be kept very sharp. Most people think that if I have a really sharp knife that I'm more likely to cut them myself, but reality is that a dull knife is much more dangerous and you're likely to cut yourself pretty severely. So the key with a good knife is keep it nice and sharp. And the way we're going to do that is with, preferably if you have one, a Waterstone, or if you have one, a straightening steel. Straightening steel is that thing you find in a knife block that's a round circular, looks like a long pencil with a handle on it. Those typically, like one of these here, this is a straightening steel. So this is used not really to sharpen the knife, this is used to straighten the edge of the blade. So what happens is when you use the blade, it starts out like this, okay? And over time, the edge curls over like this. So that's what it means to have a dull knife. So these things used, basically you draw the knife up against the straightening steel like so, 3 or 4 times this way, and then the other way, like that. That will help straighten out the blade. Now for this kind of knife, this is a Japanese knife, it's very hard. These kind of knives I typically wouldn't use a straightening steel on. I use a Waterstone. So for the Waterstone, I'm going to wet the stone down, let's let it soak in the water for a period of time, and then I'm going to take the knife and I'm going to run it up at a nice shallow angle. I don't know if you can see that. Look at the angle here. Okay. If you look at the angle is about 15 degrees. It's a very shallow angle, okay, like that. All right, and I'm going to run the knife up the stone, always keeping that angle nice and straight so that I don't vary the angle. I want to keep that angle constant all the way up. I'm going to run it up about a few times. And I'm going to turn it around and do the opposite side. So the old Boy Scout way that they used to show you to sharpen your knife, that was basically meant so you didn't kill yourself with it. It's not very good for actually sharpening a good quality knife. So if you have good quality knives, always sharpen it like that. Straight up the blade. And by the time you're done, you'll have a nice sharp blade. Whenever you're switching grits, like if this has a 1000 grit on one side and it has a 6000 grit on the other, whenever you switch grits, always make sure you clean the blade off, because otherwise you're just dragging a bunch of heavy grit onto the fine side. So this side is a 6000 grit, and what it's going to do is put a nice polish on the blade. All right. There we go. That should be good for this work here. Very nice. And we can clean it off. Okay, so now, as far as cutting is concerned, one of the biggest issues that I see people do is they cut like this. So this is really bad. When you cut like this, if the knife slips, it goes right into the side of your finger. Okay, so typically a bad idea. Also, in order to do this properly, you've got to be paying attention all the time. If you watch a professional chef cook, they will cut in such a way that they don't even need to look at it. And I learned this from a friend of mine who's a professional chef. And if you watch him cut stuff, you'll notice that he almost never looks at his hands. And the reason he doesn't look at his hands is because when he cuts, he keeps his fingers straight up and down. And he puts the knife blade against his hand. So you always know where the knife blade is, okay? You don't do this, you do this, okay? This way, I can talk to you, okay, and I can cut at the same time, and I don't end up cutting myself, okay? I always know where the knife is, and I keep my thumb tucked in underneath, so my thumb's out of the way, okay? And then it's very easy at that point to cut very effectively, very efficiently, and if you have a sharp knife, it goes right through it, okay? So that is the proper way to cut. It's also very useful when you're gonna cut things, if you're gonna cut them into slices, like say you need to cube a potato, you can cut them one way first, muck them up, and then you can just do this, and it's very fast, okay? All right. So the other way, the other style of cutting is when you're cutting some herbs or something that requires it to be very fine, called mince. This is what they would call dice, the size of dice. But if you're going to cut something really small and mince it, that's where this knife comes in very handy, because this knife basically has this rocking motion you can do with it. So if I need to mince something, I'm going to do this with it. I'm going to hold one end of the blade down, and I'm just going to quickly rock the knife up and down, okay? And then I'm going to use the knife blade to push the stuff together again, clean the edge of the blade off, always wiping off the edge of the blade, not along the edge of the blade. I'm going to wipe off, right? I don't want anybody out there losing their fingertips here. And we can do this, and this knife will make very short work of that task. And so I'll end up with a nice little set of minced whatever, onion, herbs, whatever I need to, okay? So that's knives. I think it's very valuable to invest in a good set of quality knives. It's important because you can use them forever, and you will find yourself cursing a lot less in the kitchen, because having cheap knives, especially the ones that are low carbon steel, they dull really fast. They're constantly dull. You're constantly having to sharpen them. It makes cooking a hassle. Therefore, you don't do it because it's a hassle. All right. The other thing that's important in the kitchen, one of the things we tried to do here, was to arrange the kitchen in such a way that things are where you need them when you need them. Okay. So, like this area here is a prep area. It's also an area where we might do some cutting meats, putting stuff on the plates and things like that. So therefore, we have a set of plates nearby. All right? Keep the plates nearby. So if I need to put something on a plate, I got a plate right here. The other thing is bowls and things I might need while I'm cooking. The bowls are right here. Okay. So anytime I need to do something that requires me to put something in a bowl, I've got a bowl right there. If I need to plate something, I've got a plate right there. Okay. If I need to rinse something, I'm over here. Most kitchens are set up with a triangle. There's a triangle of utility in the kitchen. The cleaning area, the prepping area, and the cooking area usually form some kind of a triangle. And you want them to be somewhat close together. So big kitchens, like massive kitchens where things are on the opposite side of the kitchen, I don't find those very useful, and professional chefs hate them because you have to move too much. You want to be able to stay in one place. So for instance, when we're over here cooking, okay, we've got some things here that we might need to cook with, okay, spoons and such. We've got spices right here. If we need to get to some spices, we got all the spices. Olive oil, very important, right there. Okay, so keeping things local to where you're working is very important. All right. Other things I might say would be, in terms of the kitchen, is keeping the sink relatively clean. If you're cooking, if you've got a whole load of dishes sitting in the sink, it's hard to do anything. So keeping the sink cleaned out is always a good, useful thing. But other than that, that's the first episode.